Ahmer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi. Oh, great, great. We've got you. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you out there?
I'm very, very well, Ahmer. Very, very well. Been very pleased to be reading about all your excellent projects and things that you've got going on in Pakistan. And hopefully in the next sort of 20 minutes or so, we can talk a little bit about Patari as well. But first of all, 378. Now, Manny was just with me a second ago, and he asked me, at the start of this match, would you have taken 378 if you were offered it?
Oh, no way. It's at least 75 runs too short. And you don't really put up any sort of scoreboard pressure with that. And especially given how well England batted in the first test. So you really need that going in your favor. Is the way Pakistan worked tactically. 378 is at the absolute lower end of what's still possible to take to pull off the Misbah sort of approach where you slightly strangle them, get the run rate down below 3, keep it down there, and then start picking up wickets, and it becomes too big of a deficit to make up. 378 gives you very little leeway to do that. You need some exceptional bowling to put England in a spot of bother.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but on the subject of exceptional bowling, Pakistan have their main strike bowler back with Yasir Shah. Is there probably still a lot of optimism in the Pakistan camp with him coming in, and will he be expected to pull off quite a big job here for Pakistan?
Yeah, I think one of the problems that Pakistan had was in their own minds, perhaps. They really overachieved last year. That series against Australia and then New Zealand, and it capped off, did well against Sri Lanka as well later on. So it's been capping off a very good run for the test team. And then at the start of the series, first you lost Azhar at number 3, who's really emerged as one of the most solid number 3s in the world. And then you lost Yasir as well. And since then, Pakistan have been a bit out of funk. At least in the batting in all 3 innings, they've been very complacent. The scores in 2 of those might not suggest that, but I feel they've been very complacent. Yasir coming back should give them a lot more confidence when they bowl now. And that's now it's going to be, I think this is the most interesting innings so far, the one that's about to come. Because you really want to see how well England cope with that. Because there is this belief, at least in the cricket circles, the Paces yard team, that once you get Cook out against the spinners, England will be a bit suspect, and that includes Root and Bell as well.
Yeah, in the previous test match, I noticed that Bell kept coming down the track. He had this kind of premeditated strategy of coming down the track to every ball that the spinners. But it's not a very comfortable approach, is it?
Exactly, and you saw that especially when Cook was batting with Bell, in the sense that the way Cook's bat would come, the way he would decide how to use his feet, the way he would leave the ball, it was all exceptional, and that was everything that Bell wasn't doing, despite the fact that he got a lot of runs. As you said, there was a lot of premeditated lunges. His bat and pad is still quite close together, which was a problem last time around for him, and he had. Cook had the more obvious reprieves, but, the lack of a second spinner to work with Zulfikar Babar allowed some of the English batsmen to get away, perhaps, in the first match. That being said, they'd obviously be a lot more confident now, so they should bat better than they would have otherwise. But definitely, I'd agree that, with someone like Bell, you've got that weakness there that he doesn't seem to have sorted out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I completely agree with you there as well. So, before we move on and we're talking about spinners and the weakness of spinners, let's talk about the re-emergence of a man to Pakistan cricket after 6 years. Now, I think you and I might have disagreed about this character before in the past, but I just like him because he's nice to me when I bump into him in Nando's. Shoaib Malik, what did you make of that comeback? Because I noticed a lot of cynicism about him on Twitter from a lot of Pakistan fans, which is it's specific to Pakistan, isn't it? That kind of cynicism after a man just scores you a double hundred.
Well, I think I'd say that Twitter has introduced me to a lot more cynicism from cricket fans around the world than I thought was possible. Originally, I would have thought it was uniquely Pakistani. It might still be. Shoaib Malik is definitely a uniquely Pakistani phenomenon, because I've written about this as well. You've got this situation where he's still up to his old, politicking and PR and using all those off the field assets very well. And at the same time, he's putting up the runs. And then there's a third factor in which, the fate seems to be conspiring with him as well, because you've got, so Fawad Alam finally got a test call up. Century on debut, one of the greatest averages in first-class cricket for Pakistan. And then, Malik gets drafted into the squad really as an afterthought because, he's been doing well in limited overs, but they decide to get him into test cricket. And then suddenly Azhar gets injured. And, instead of going with Fawad, they say maybe we can use Shoaib's bowling, which they had some use of in the side.
If you just joined us, by the way, we're talking to Ahmer Naqvi of Paces PCR, and we've just lost the call. So I'm just going to call him back and we're going to continue that discussion. Some fascinating insight there into the reintroduction of Shoaib Malik into the Pakistan side. He's right. Fate did kind of conspire with him. He was the 16th man in the squad, and yet he managed to somehow play, and not only play, but kind of star for Pakistan. He mentioned Emmer there as well. He's written an article about him on Cricinfo, which you can find, which talks about, I think, sort of slightly backhandedly about his success, or certainly his his reintroduction into the side. Our call did just drop, so hopefully we'll be back on with Emma very, very shortly, and we'll keep the discussion going. I'm very keen to talk about Burka, Avenger, which is a Pakistani animated show, which he's now a writer on as well. It's a very cool program. And also Patari music, which hopefully he's going to tell us all about momentarily when we reconnect. And we're back. We've got Emma back again.
Yeah. Where'd you lose me?
You were just talking about Shoaib Malik in the second innings.
Sorry. So can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly, mate.
So what I was saying was that, what Malik's had is, as I said, he's had fate conspire with him, and he's made his opportunities count. And because Pakistan, when he left cricket, Pakistan was at least playing, the top teams in the world a lot more often. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to be playing a lot of the Sri Lanka and Zimbabwe and these sorts of pitches and conditions, and so I would imagine him actually probably even doing very well until he retires. So there is a hint of perhaps conspiracy to it.
I mean, he does. I've read the thing you wrote about his social media use, right? And I'd prefer to just read it. I took it straight, He does use his social media quite well. He's on his Snapchat a lot as well, I noticed, which I was introduced to this year, and it's quite. It's admirable in a way that there's a Pakistani cricketer who's managed to bring himself into the modern age of technology, and he's not restricting himself to just taking selfies. He's doing some interesting things on social media, engaging with some of his fans and followers. Surely that's to be applauded and encouraged in the side.
Oh yeah, I would say this actually over the last year or so, where as a journalist I've had a chance to meet with a lot of cricketers and more importantly people who run the game or who put money in the game, and the first thing you realize is that I think apart from Afridi to an extent and Shoaib Malik, no one in Pakistan cricket really realizes their value. Categorically, I can tell you that this is the most prized commodity in the country, and yet a lot of guys. I think the best example I had was Misbah himself. And there's a lot said about Misbah's really humble, this, that, and the other. But he's a smart guy and he realized a lot of things. But until recently, he really didn't realize how big an impact being the captain of the Pakistan cricket team is in this country. Across all classes and people. And that's something Shoaib Malik's picked up on. I would raise our point of contention about, just putting up selfies, because Shehzad, the selfie king, is actually excellent on social media and interacting with his fans as well. Shoaib Malik's is actually a lot more carefully controlled. So Shehzad does these, I don't know if anyone's interested, but he does these hashtags, Ask Ahmed. And he's got these fans called Shehzadians who use a lot of emojis, and they are absolutely nuts about him. He's got a more engaged fan base than Shoaib Malik does. But Shoaib Malik, he's smart. He came in the celebrity video that Ali Zafar put out, and he'll make sure to congratulate Virender Sehwag on time when he retires and stuff like that. So it's a lot more calculated. Actually, I think that's the word I'm going for. Calculated. That's the Malik comeback to you. It's been very, very calculated and it's been pulled off. And as I think it's important to point out that not all of that is something that, I mean, technically I admire somebody who's calculating like that, and some of the things he's doing, Pakistan cricket really needs to go in that direction, especially what the stuff that you said about or I said about fan interaction and having an image and putting yourself out there and cultivating that image for your own good. That's something that sportsmen do all over the world. Pakistan needs to catch up on that.
Absolutely, and it doesn't have to be restricted to a team hairdresser like Wasim Akram was suggesting once upon a time. Listen, you talked about some celebrities there. You mentioned Ali Zafar. Now you're kind of mixing with these people now. I noticed recently you became a writer on a beloved Pakistani animated series called Burka Avenger. How did that happen? Because you still describe yourself as a journalist, Ahmer. How did that happen?
It was had to do with journalism. There's these couple of guys from Karachi who had taken this mythical character from this South Asian mythology called Yar and made a graphic novel about him. And I went to interview them. And one of the guys there, a friend of theirs, was an animator for Burka Avenger, and he said, "I'm looking for a writer." So I ended up working with them for the seasons 2 to 4. Writing the scripts for that. But it was all free. I mean, calling myself a journalist is because I don't really have a catch-all phrase for what I do. So it's the easiest thing to say.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, because you're doing loads of stuff, and I wanted to ask you about Patari as well a little bit, because I see it a lot on your timeline, and I've never fully understood what it is. And we should probably explain to listeners who aren't familiar with Burka Avenger, but it's a very, very popular series in Pakistan. You should YouTube it. It's very cool. It's about a teacher by day who becomes kind of a superhero by night. It's very cool, very interesting, and a very cool bad guy as well, I've got to say. Baba Banduk is...
yeah, he's awesome.
He really is. He really is. T-shirt selling worthy. So, anyway, tell me about Patari, and how did that happen? How did your involvement with that happen? Did you what's the impact of it? How can people get involved and take on some Pakistani independent music?
Patari is actually something that was overdue for a while. So it's a website and a mobile app for Pakistani music. Maybe not so much in the last few years, but especially for people growing up in the 90s and the 2000s, music was and remains as integral to Pakistani society as cricket is, if not more even. And we all grew up with a very thriving music scene, which kind of hasn't really fallen apart in terms of the quality of music, but in terms of access to it, because of the terrorism and everything, concerts had died down, and the music channels had shut down, etc. So this was something that, I was very interested in music and was writing and reporting on it. And I came across the founder of Patari, he's a young guy called Khalid Bajwa. And what they'd done was, the biggest problem in Pakistan is that, people are not used to paying online. And so they wouldn't end up paying for music. And, with CDs and stuff all gone the way of history, you needed a solution for that. So Patari is something that you can download for free and use for free. And there are ads that run on it, and that go towards paying the artist. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. We launched about a month ago. And we aim to cover every kind of Pakistani audio, not just music. So we're putting up stand-up sets as well. The Paces Space Yard podcast is on there. We're putting up radio plays as well, and then all languages of Pakistan. And we've curated playlists for genres, for moods. We made a playlist for when Aatif, Ahmer, and Butt had their bands finished. There's a playlist that was mixed with Mera Piya Ghar Aaja and Mr. Fraudier type of songs.
Amazing.
So, yeah. So, thanks for bringing that up. I'd love for you guys to check it out. It's patari.pk, and the apps are on Android and iOS. And Pakistani music is as intoxicating as Pakistani cricket. So if you haven't been introduced to it, I'd highly recommend it.
I could certainly attest to all of that, all of the above, and I shall be. I will send out some tweets momentarily talking about making sure people can get access to Patari and listen to some very cool Pakistani music. Hey, listen, let's transition very slowly back to the cricket because, I mean, there's something that's going to have a lot of celebrity involvement as well in Pakistan, well, in the UAE, and that's the Pakistan Super League, which finally is going to take off. I don't know if you remember, Ahmer, but we had a conversation about this, I think 4 years ago. We talked about this 4 years ago when it was called the Pakistan Premier League, when it was being mooted, and now it looks like it's on the cusp of actually happening. There's bids going out there, there's consortiums being put together. Me and Katie are going to put together a consortium as well and try and buy ourselves a Pakistan Super League team. But
Guerrilla Guerrilla cricket team.
Guerrilla Guerrilla cricket, yeah, absolutely. There's no image on this, Katie.
Hello.
But Katie is waving to you right now, and Ahmer says hi. So here's the thing: what's the impact of this going to be like for Pakistani cricket, and does it actually bring us closer to having cricket in Pakistan again?
Okay, so those are two separate questions because I'll just answer the second one first.
Mm-hmm.
With regards to having cricket in Pakistan is obviously something that's beyond the scope of cricket itself. That's a security situation. Mm-hmm. And with the PSL, I know this for a fact that when the PCB went to the state, the Pakistani state, the security authorities, the military and everyone, and they said that we want to do this PSL. And at that point, they carried out this survey, and just about every non-Pakistani cricketer in the world had said they did not want to play in Pakistan. And then they floated the idea of a PSL of just Pakistani players. And the security establishment said we cannot guarantee the safety of that because we have these poorly attended T20 tournaments that happen in one city, there's 30 games or something. But to have a countrywide league with repeated matches and lots of promotion, it wasn't possible. So point being that, that cricket can only do so much in these situations. It's obviously going to be when the country's situation improves, which hopefully it will soon. The second thing about the impact on Pakistani cricket, when this news came out, a lot of people were like, "Oh, why are they holding it in the UAE?" It was in Qatar for actually a brief while as well.
Yeah, that was weird.
Why
there's like one stadium in Qatar. What was the Qatar connection all about?
That was basically what had happened was that the PSL was still, hadn't had its issues resolved. And then this Masters Cricket League that all these retired players are involved in, that was supposed to get started. And so they booked the stadiums. And so the PCB hadn't booked them in time because the PCB was having a chairmanship struggle that was in the courts and everything. So by the time they got around to booking it, they couldn't. They went to Qatar then, and then the MCL isn't coming out or was delayed or something, so they got the stadiums back again. But long story short, at the start, all of this was being vociferously criticized in Pakistan, and people were very critical of the board. But then you had this T20 tournament, the domestic one. And Hassan and Rehan, two of my colleagues, were there, and they said just about every domestic player in Pakistan was using this as an audition for the PSL. And it was a very well played tournament. It was won by a completely unheralded Peshawar team which defended its title, and that's actually a fascinating story in itself. It's a Moneyball kind of team, and throughout the tournament, everybody was really putting in that effort because they wanted to be picked up by the PSL, and so the players have bought into it, which is the most important thing, and I think the fans will as well. And then because of all the wrangling that's happened with India and the kind of humiliation the PCB has had to go through, perceived or otherwise, I think people are getting behind the PSL for that reason. So I'm very hopeful, very optimistic about it.
That's excellent. I mean, a lot of us here in England are. There's a lot of curiosity around this. It's getting a lot more press than I expected it to. And, of course, now with the inclusion of so many foreign players, we're hoping it's going to be a success. But as I said, we're slowly coming back to the game at hand right now. Before the series began, I kind of very boldly, Glenn McGrath-style, predicted that Pakistan would win it 3-0, which is obviously not possible anymore. But how do you see the rest of this series? And, well, let's start with this match. How do you see the rest of this match going? Are Pakistan still favourites, would you say?
One of the interesting things has been that, I mean, I know all Pakistani fans have been predicting these whitewashes. I was really surprised by the English media, whatever I've read of it. They seem to be pretty nonplussed about the challenge from Pakistan. And after that first match, beefy was like, oh, Pakistan are there for the taking, etc. So I have a feeling that both teams are still sort of, or at least the discussion about both teams is still hasn't made sense as yet. And part of that is England have played better than everybody thought they would. And part of the reason has been that Pakistan had important injuries and they haven't really, they haven't really seemed to have woken up for this the way they were last year when the teams from down under came. For the rest of this game, I think what's really going to be important is how England play Pakistan spinners. Because this is not exactly a pitch that's theoretically very spin friendly, but Yasir Shah is very confident about bowling in pitches exactly like these. He's somebody who's got a great record against left-handers, which leg spinners theoretically, usually don't have. And so he's somebody who can really be the sort of like difference between what otherwise seems to be a match that, I conceivably would head for another draw.
And, I mean, how about the rest of the series? What do you reckon? I mean, do you think it's possible we're going to see 3 draws played out here unless we see some kind of self-destruction from one of the teams in terms of batting, kind of like Pakistan did in the second innings?
I think Pakistan, but that self-destruction that happened, Aatif, you watched Pakistan enough. Like,
I was waiting for it. Just the one-off. But it was a really interesting thing, though, because, with the main character that came out of that, I mean, the discussion wasn't really centered around Pakistan's self-destruction as much as it was Adil Rashid's kind of, return to prominence within within 5 days. He went from full-on zero to hero. It kind of transitioned. What was the response to Adil Rashid? Was there any discussion about him in Pakistan?
No. See, what happened with Adil Rashid is that cricket has leg spinners are a rarity. So we all have this like soft spot for them. And then when someone has such a horrible debut, you really wish things turn around for them. So on that end, yeah, it's nice what happened to him. But if you look at the Pakistani wickets, they were pretty, they weren't really getting bamboozled by Rashid, maybe apart from like Sarfaraz and a couple of tail-enders at the end. And that's been the issue here, because also these guys are going for a lot of runs, so you don't get the feeling that they've been bowling well, but they haven't picked up wickets. Both Moeen and Rashid haven't brought a lot of control from the spin department. And that being said, it's early days yet. Somebody's third test innings, you really don't want to come to conclusions about how they'll bowl. And these pitches haven't really helped spinners. You have to compare Rashid's attempts with Leon, who came last year. I'm just Babar. It's like at least for these guys, these are home conditions. For touring spinners, Nathan Lyon, or whatever his name is, he's a very good spinner, and he didn't really have much of an impact in the UAE. The Kiwis had a leg spinner as well, in that sense, I think Rashid's done well, but I don't think Pakistan's rating him very highly at this point.
Yeah, maybe that will change with time. Listen, Emma, we're coming close to the end of the lunch interval, but before we go, your final prediction for this test series. Who's going to win, and what's the scoreline going to be?
I think if Pakistan doesn't win this 2-0, that not only would they be sorely disappointed, it would mark the end of an era, because it could only happen if Misbah and Yunus don't bring their A game. I mean, I know Misbah's hit 100 right now, but the way Pakistan dominate in the UAE, it really doesn't need the pitch as much as it just, they prey on the conditions, on the boredom, on the lack of fans, which really upsets a lot of other teams. And that they haven't been able to do that so far. They haven't brought that together, and if they can't do, if they do that, I think England, as admirably as they've played, are not the better team. So they on these conditions, that important caveat. In these conditions, Pakistan's a better side. They should win 2-0. And if they don't, even if it's all draws, I think England, that'd be a huge result for them.
And what would that bode for the series next summer in England, when the conditions are reversed and England are heavy favourites and Pakistan are going into the lion's den, as it were?
So we've had the oval controversy, we've had the spot fixing one. So, if someone isn't murdered on that tour, I think we'd call it a success.
Okay, quick question, Emma. Hi, it's Katie here. I have a real soft spot for Misbah. I mean, my goodness. And we were asking this morning.
Is he married? Is that what you wanted to know,
Oh,
Katie?
well, that would be handy info.
Too late, Katie.
Sorry.
His wife and child were applauding his century yesterday.
Oh, right.
Whatever thus. Anyway, what I wondered, is there a biography, official or otherwise, that you'd recommend? And if not, who's going to write it? What about you for a start?
The first things first. With regards to the biography on Misbah, there isn't one yet. There actually haven't been a lot of biography. There used to be a very common thing for Pakistani cricketers to have biographies, and right up till the 80s, and then there haven't been a lot of them coming out since then. Shoaib Akhtar is probably the most interesting ones that's come out. The best thing that you can read on Misbah that I'd recommend is probably in the Cricketer Monthly. Hassan Cheema interviewed him at length and wrote this very long piece. I forget what it's called, but it was the cover story at around the World Cup, February or something. So that's the best right now. And I think we've been trying to tell Hassan to turn that into a book, because he gets along very well with Misbah, and Misbah is a great person to speak to. Like he is the greatest cricket nerd that I've come across.
Is he like Mr. Cricket?
Oh yeah. He'll spend the day like so. What they say is that when they get done in the UAE, then one of the guys from 10 Sports, Basit Khan and Misbah, they eat enormous amounts of meat and keep talking about cricket for another 8 hours. And Basit says
manly.
that after a while I give up. I'm like, I spent the whole day doing this and you spend the whole day playing it. I can't discuss this anymore.
Okay.
But Misbah loves to talk.
No, but one quick question. I know they're coming out, but what's he going to do afterwards? Is he going to commentate? I so hope he's going to commentate.
I think he could. He was a very good cricket analyst that they had on TV for one of the tours right after the World Cup.
Okay.
And I really think Misbah hasn't understood the kind of impact he's had in Pakistan and the kind of popularity he has both in and outside of Pakistan.
Right.
He's gotten very used to the media and everything, and so we've hung out with him over the summer, and he had a chance to come speak at some events, and I think he was surprised by how well people reacted to him.
Well, I'm drawing him today, Emma. I'm drawing him today, so it'd be brilliant if you could tweet him with it. The last couple of days I drew Shoaib Akhtar, wasn't it?
Shoaib Malik.
Shoaib Malik, sorry, excuse me.
Brilliant.
Of course, not Akhtar. And
less genital warts in that one.
And then I did Rashid. I did Rashid yesterday. Well, today it's my lucky day because it's my heart's desire.
Katie, what's also interesting is that Misbah's wife is also an artist, so he's clearly into.
I think you call it interesting. I think that's a bit of a downer because he'll suss the competition and I won't get tweeted. Anyway,
Emma, very quickly, just because the players are out, Imran Khan's ready to take the first ball, but before he bowls, tell us again the links for Patari and where people can watch Burka Avenger.
So Burka Avenger is available on Pakistani channel called on Nickelodeon in Pakistan, and it's syndicating in other countries. I'm not sure when. Patari is www.patari.pk, and if you search for Patari on the App Store or the Play Store, you'll find apps for Android and iOS. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolute pleasure, Ahmer. Thank you so much, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Right, and let's hope we win.
Yes, Pakistan Zindabad. Absolutely. Speak to you later, mate. Cheers.